Welcome to Coral Woods Conservation Area, where we're offering you a virtual field study of our Festival of the Sugar Maples.
So here at our historical station, we like to talk a little bit about how Native Americans discovered the use of sap within the trees and how they cooked with it and made their food taste a lot better. And they've been doing it for hundreds of years. And then the pioneers came along and discovered the things that the Native Americans had taught them with using sap to cook with. And they brought along the uses of iron. And so with that, they were able to modernize the methods of collecting sap and cooking it as well by using things like a big kettle. And they actually made a system where they could control how high and low the sap would be boiling over the fire to make sure they didn't burn it. Here in a little bit, you guys will see how we've taken it a step further with our evaporator, which will be one of the last things we talk about today. But another invention that the pioneers had brought with them was the use of the yoke, a French invention, and this would actually help with carrying the heavy buckets of sap and being able to make multiple trips. And you would just mount this up on your shoulders like so, and this would help you from spilling sap and knocking the buckets against your legs, because these buckets would be very, very heavy as you're collecting sap throughout the sugar bushes. Now today, you guys will see a little bit more about the use of a spile and how this is what we use to get the sap out of the trees and collect it into buckets, and from there we'll cook it down and make maple syrup.
So in order for us to determine which trees we want to tap out here at Coral Woods, the first thing that is important to know is that we have a sugar maple tree. So I'm going to share with you a couple different ways on how we can identify our sugar maple trees in order to determine these are in fact the trees we want to collect the sap from. So one of the things we can look at when identifying a sugar maple tree is if we look up the trunk of the tree to the branches and take a close look at the branches, you'll see what is called opposite branching. So if you look along this branch here, wherever there's a branch on one side, there's also one on the other. It is symmetrical. So this is what is called opposite branching. The other type of branching is known as alternate, but the sugar maple tree has the opposite branching. Another thing we can look at on our sugar maple trees is for the gray scaly bark of a sugar maple tree, and also their sharp pointy buds. Another key characteristic of the sugar maple tree is their very distinct palmate leaves, but obviously this time of year these trees don't have any leaves because it was winter and we're going into spring. Photosynthesis occurs using sunlight, water, and the green pigment chlorophyll. Since water is involved in this photosynthesis process, it doesn't take place in the winter time. So in the fall, our leaves die and our trees are kind of dormant. And through the process of photosynthesis, sap is produced. Sap is essentially the tree's food. Since sap is 97% water, these trees store their food in their roots during the winter time when they are dormant. So in February and March, as we have warm days and freezing nights, this is the time of year that's perfect for tapping our maple trees and collecting the sap, because the sap is moving from the roots up the trunk into the branches of the tree as we have freezing nights and warmer days.
So once you've found your sugar maple tree, you need to make a hole in it to get the sap to come out. We use these old drills, Brayson bits. You push some pressure against that, hold the handle, and simply spin. It's a time-consuming process, but you can see the wood shavings coming off, so we're starting to make a hole. You want to go in 1.5 to 2 inches deep so that you've gotten far enough in to get to the sapwood past the bark where the sap is actually flowing. When you're ready to put a spile in, a spile is kind of like a water slide. It's hollow on the middle. There's a hole on one side so the sap can drip out. Before you put the spile in, we'll spray with a bleach water solution, very diluted bleach, right into the hole you've created so that you're cleaning it out a little bit, trying to prevent bacteria from going in. When we tap our trees, we'll use a piece of equipment to prevent damaging the spile, but simply tap it in with a hammer. And you can hang something as simple as a clear milk jug. That'll collect over time, and when it's full, you can take it off, pour it into another container, and put it back on. All right, so you've made it to the evaporator house. All of the sap we collect comes into this storage tank, and we're able to feed it through this tube into the evaporator where we're evaporating water out. As you learned, sap is 3% sugar. Syrup is actually 66% sugar, so that's what we're doing in here, is removing some of that water. Now, no matter what we do, this is a very time-consuming process. It takes about 8 hours of a rolling boil for us to actually make syrup. It will take 40 gallons of sap to make just 1 gallon of syrup. So we have a lot of work to do. But when we think we're ready, we do a special test using a tool called a hydrometer. And this helps to check basically the thickness of a liquid. And when I do this test, I'm going to pour what we think is finished syrup. So I'm going to drop it in. We're very close. It's not quite up there, but it's standing straight up and it didn't hardly bounce. So we've got a couple more minutes to wait, and then we're going to go ahead and jar this up.